Welcome in. This is Kelly Adams from Beyond Home Care, and joining me is Shasta Kromer from Prime Management. I guess Prime and Community. What do you?
Yep, home health. Yep. We have two offices, one in the Opelika area, which is Prime, and then in Tallahassee is Community.
Awesome. So
Yep.
Shasta and I have taken this kind of presentation on the road a couple of times, and it looks very different than how we're going to do it today. But we thought, why not try it in a virtual setting? Because maybe we can reach a little bit more of a different audience. So
Absolutely.
today, what we're going to kind of talk about is the continuum of care. You know, what that looks like as somebody's aging, and if an injury happens and maybe we can't stay home, or what that kind of looks like. But then also we're going to come back to the home side of it, and if we want to stay home and age in place, what we can look at from there. Shasta, when we've done this in the past, we have had a panel of experts with us, and so today it'll just be me and you.
Yeah. Answering all the questions. I know.
But that'll be okay. So if anyone has any questions, or if you need more information about something, you're welcome to ask. This is not live, so we'll have to come back and answer your questions. We just weren't brave enough to do this live the first time.
That's right.
We'll come back and answer your questions as you have them. But just know that if there's something that we don't dig into really deep, or if there's an area that you have a lot of questions about, we could bring in somebody who does have more expertise and experience in that, because typically we have about 10 people sitting up with us, from financial to attorneys to hospice and licensed social workers. I mean, you name it, we usually have them alongside us. So this will be a different type of presentation. But that's okay.
Yes.
That's okay. All right. So Shasta, let's kind of start from the beginning, and I'm going to throw it to you. So let's kind of take people through a scenario of an aging person who maybe has an illness or an injury, and they're going to need to start looking at a long-term care solution.
Absolutely. So we'll just use, I guess, Miss Smith as an example. And so if Miss Smith has a fall or becomes unwell and is not feeling well, there's a lot of different ventures that she can take. And I'm going to start by saying, or go back and say, that if you have not had these conversations with your family or your loved one that is aging, it is so important to start having them now. The sooner that you have these conversations and you ask them the questions on what their goals are, it makes all the difference, because whenever something does happen and Miss Smith falls, her family knows the route and the plan and what to do. So I know we'll talk about that, all those details later. But
shameless plug, I will add a link to the comments where I have 5 conversations that you should be having with your aging parent. So if you don't know what conversations to go into, or how to approach those, or especially if you're worried about getting some pushback, I'm going to make sure that you have that link so that you can get that free resource, and it will help kind of guide those conversations.
Absolutely. So starting out, Miss Smith has a fall. She is in the hospital. And so the family or the social worker comes to the family and says, hey, here's the next steps and here's the next options. So Miss Smith can either, if we're going down the facility line, go to acute rehab, which is usually 10 to 14 days at an acute facility such as Encompass in Phoenix City. They can go there, or they can do 21 days in a skilled care facility, nursing home. Insurance typically pays for both, either way. Then once she gets ready to discharge from there, the question is to go back home or facilities. If they're going to do the facility line, independent living is going to be the first option that you would come to. we know that in independent living, they offer like meals, activities, that type thing. Pay is all set up different based on the facility, and insurance does not pay for this. Medical insurance, your Medicare, things like that, do not pay for this. Kelly, stop me if I keep like rambling on too long or the
No, you're
details.
good. You're going exactly where you need to go.
Okay. So Medicare does not pay for these type of facilities. Now, long-term care on the financial piece, whenever we get into that, that will explain more as to the benefits of what it will pay for as we go down this line. But after independent living, then you have assisted living. Assisted living, there are several options in our area as far as the Auburn Opelika area. But they do activities. There's a skilled nurse there or a medical med tech that will do medicines. So if you're not sure that she can handle her medicines once she gets home, they can do that. Physical therapy can also be done. There are facilities that have physical therapy in the buildings. So that can be there coming home from a fall. That would be great. Home health can also come in to this facility. Then after that, you go into a SCALF, which is a specialty care. So a lot of times families miss the line of a loved one who's being diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia. And they're like, well, whenever it gets too bad and they can't live by herself, then we'll just go to assisted living. But the state regs on assisted living for Alzheimer's and dementia, there's like fine line that a lot of families miss. And so if their memory's bad, they can't remember their medicines, things like that, they no longer qualify for an assisted living.
I think that is a piece that, like, you're right. So many families miss. And they think that just because Miss Smith lives independently right now and she has Alzheimer's, that then she could live, independently / in an assisted. But the number one thing that we see the difference is the lockdown side of it.
Yes.
So it's that keeping that facility locked so that the person isn't wandering, isn't an elopement risk. Whereas that may not be the same concern at the home, but you got to think about state regulations, like you were saying.
Yeah.
They're gonna, when you look to go into an assisted living, a skilled nursing facility, whatever it is, they're going to give some sort of a mini mental exam.
Right.
And that kind of tells them, where the patient's mental state is and whether or not they qualify. So I think that just, that needs to be kind of highlighted separate, because we see that so often.
Yes, absolutely.
That people don't seem to understand that. And not all even skilled nursing facilities can take an Alzheimer's client. So that's just something to highlight. If you know that that's in the future, that you need to be planning ahead for that looks like a different path.
Completely different path. And two, a lot of times, like in conversations that I have with families or that they may miss, is the food, the interaction, like with other people their age and the activities. If you get them into a facility sooner, the decline may not happen as fast. Right. At the assisted living I used to work at, we had a family who came in, had no idea that mom had lost so much weight until her next 3-month appointment. They didn't realize she was giving her food to her dog. So the containers were being picked up by the daughter who was making the food, but they didn't realize that it was going to the dog and that the mom had lost so much weight. So there are a lot of situations and things that happen that you've got to like plan and be aware. And as soon as you realize that there is cognitive deficit or mom's just being forgetful, really sit down and making sure that you've asked the questions, you've got the documents, and then that way you can start planning the road and the path in which you're going to go. Absolutely. So if your loved one does not qualify for an assisted living, then they'll go to a specialty care, which, like you said, is a locked facility, because a lot of times Alzheimer's patients, they start wandering, they get sundowners. And so in the afternoons, there's not a whole lot to do, or they, were exit seeking, wanting to go home, wanting to find their husband, wanting to find their kids and go back to where it's comfortable. So that's locked. And then whenever you no longer qualify for specialty care assisted living, that's whenever you start making plans for either nursing home or taking your loved one back home. So,
Absolutely.
yes.
Yeah. So, I think that one thing that we also see people kind of misunderstand is that, when you first started talking about, I'm taking notes as you guys, so I can remember where we're at. But we talked about, Miss Smith, when she falls or, she needs to go into an acute rehab or a skilled rehab, and that rehab can be in a nursing facility. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much confusion behind the different types of rehab and
Yes.
then skilled nursing facilities and for the long-term care. Because you and I see this all the time. People think that Medicare is going to pay for them to age. And
Absolutely.
I think if there's one thing that I could tell anyone, it is that Medicare is not aging insurance. It is health insurance. And
That's right.
aging is
Mm-hmm.
not considered part of your medical.
No.
Yeah, there are things that happen as we age, like we might have a fall or we might have an illness that requires us to have a short-term stay in a facility.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yes.
losing that day-to-day ability to care for ourselves it's not a healthcare related expense. And so Medicare is not going to cover that.
That's right.
So let's talk a little bit about the rehab side
Okay.
and what a skilled nursing facility is initially set up for that up to that 21 days, and then what it looks like if we go long term.
Okay. So let me back up really quick. So whenever we talk about acute care and 21-day rehab, acute care is you can be admitted from home. Insurance, like you don't have to have a hospital stay. Say that you were in the hospital, you go home, you're not doing very well. You need a hospital setting, but the rehab is what is going to get you over the hump to be able to be living independently like you were previously. That one is short, 10, 14 days. Sometimes it's approved a little bit more than that, but not typically. So insurance dictates how many days that you're going to be there, and you can be admitted from home. Whereas on the nursing home long-term care side, it requires a 3-day or 3-night hospital stay. And then your insurance, your health insurance, Medicare benefit will pay for 21 days in a long-term care facility. Long-term care facility rehab, they rehab maybe about 90 minutes, an hour and a half a day. That includes all disciplines. Whereas acute rehab, you're going to get about 3 hours of therapy. So like a stroke patient just had a stroke, acute rehab, you want that quick rehab to get them going again, muscle memory, like that's the route that you want to take. Whereas somebody who may be much older, they did fall and break their hip, they may need the 21 days to get back going and then do acute rehab. You can do both of them together. Mm-hmm. Then after your 21 days, say you're on long-term care side, after your 21 days, then if your insurance allows, you may have more days that they'll pay for, or it is time to go home, or you can stay long-term if you can no longer live there or no longer live by yourself. Sorry. Yeah. So then you can be flipped to the long-term care side of things. With that being said, there's an insurance piece that depending on spend down the insurance that you have, your assets and all of that, then we start talking about Medicaid. But all of that has to be done like properly above board and typically goes much smoother if there's a plan in place, which is why we're talking about this now, so that people are more comfortable having these conversations with their loved ones,
Yeah. And I mean, the most important part is that Medicare is not going to pay for a long-term nursing home visit or nursing home stay. I think that's probably the biggest thing that people don't realize. And when we're not going to go real deep into Medicaid today because we could get really in the weeds. But when we talk about spending down your assets and stuff, we're talking about you have to have less than $2,000 to your name in assets. Yeah. So for the normal everyday person who worked most of their life, unless you have been receiving care at home, spending down already. If you had an accident, broke a hip, and then all of a sudden you can't stay home any longer, chances are you have retirement accounts and you have your home paid off and savings and 401k and whatever else. All of that has to be spent down or placed appropriately with a financial advisor before Medicaid will start to pay for a nursing facility. So that's one part that we continuously see people not really understand. And I think
Absolutely.
that it's important just to plug that, we're not going to get too far into the financials, but financial wealth management, even though it sounds like wealth management is for the rich people, it's for everyday folks. It's for those that you're on limited income and you need to make sure that you're being the best steward for your money and your
Yeah.
finances. So these are conversations that you need to start having with your trusted advisors and your children and whoever it is that is part of that care team that you're with. Having a plan in place, or at least understanding what assets you have available to you, is a much better option than all of a sudden having to go just wherever. Whoever will take you, whatever you can afford, wherever.
Yeah.
That's never a good option.
Option. Well, and two, I'm sure you've seen this lately, but I feel like it's come up more recently, or a lot more lately, is like land. There are so many families who have land and it's still in loved like their parents' name. Nothing was ever done appropriately with it, what it needed to do. And now mom, like tough decisions have to be made. And with those tough decisions, it's like, what do we do with the land? Either pay out of pocket, which the financial side of keeping her at home with other things can get expensive. But now what do we do with this land, which a lot of times will stop like the loved one receiving care that they need because nobody wants to lose that, you know?
Yeah. We see that with land and homes.
Yes.
When we ask a group, do you own your own home? Pretty much everybody raises their hand. Their home's paid off, but
Yeah.
maybe they just didn't save very much for retirement or for aging. But what we have to remember is that when you paid your mortgage monthly, you put in money to that asset, and that's the vehicle that we need to use to help you take care
Yes.
of you.
Yes.
Leaving it behind for your kids is a
Mm-hmm.
really nice idea. But I just saw a study not too long ago. Most adult children don't want that property, even though it's been in the family and it's a great thought. But the new generations, that's just not what they want. And so, I know for my own self, and I know we've talked about this before, I want my mom and dad taken care of. So I
Yes.
want them to use that asset and make sure they're comfortable and that somebody can take care of them and that they're not struggling, because they want to leave their house. What am I going to do with their house?
Not even in the city that I live in anymore that my family's in, you know? Well, and then not only that, but, and I'm sure you remember the statistic, but not only that, but so many children don't even know that their parents have planned on them taking care of them and like they haven't even had that conversation. They just assume because that's what they did with their mother or their father years and
Right.
years and years ago, that that's what they're going to, like our kids are going to do that. But I know for me, like I love my parents and I'll do anything for them, but I have a 3 and a 9-year-old, you
Yeah.
know, and so the idea of moving them in here in my house right now is not like the perfect setup. And so my mom's home and dad, like the things that they have is what's going to help pay for us to be able to take care of them the way that they need to be taken care of properly.
Yeah, and I think what people need to realize is there's not one way to age or to have a plan or to kind of
That's
go
right.
about. Everybody has a unique situation and a unique family dynamic, and we have worked with so many different families and we have seen it all. Um, but what works well for one family is not going to work for another one. And so
That's right.
just because, your neighbor did it a certain way, it doesn't mean that that's the way that you need to do it. There's not a right or wrong way. So
No.
when we talk about having these conversations, I think if you leave this with nothing else, leave with the idea that, hey, we need to talk. We need to be having open conversations. I think that's one of the best gifts that you can give your adult children. And if you're the adult child, it's one of the best things that you can do for your parents, because what we tend to find is that it's not the aging person who doesn't want to have the conversation. A lot of times it's the family.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, because it's hard to bring up, and you don't know how to bring it up, which goes back to the 5 topics that you have, and the questions and how to navigate those and what to do, because it's all out of love. That's the only reason that you want to know,
Yeah. Well, it
and
just normalizes it. I mean, there's
it
one
does.
guarantee that we all have in this lifetime, and we're not getting out of it alive.
That's exactly right.
We've got to normalize it to a degree, so that we can have the conversation, and it's not just so weird and awkward at the end. But at the same time, we're all going to go through it. And I think, as adult children, the more that we can talk to each other about, our cohorts about it, the more normalized it becomes. And then it's not this isolation, loneliness. No one else is going through it except for me, because it's a shared experience that we're all going to have.
Yes, absolutely. You don't have to go through it by yourself. There are so many. We've either heard the stories or going through it ourselves. And I want to go back and touch on, you were talking about like the journey, and everybody has a separate journey through the aging process. And what I do and what your family does is completely different. And just because there's a plan that is set doesn't mean that that's the way it has to be all the way through. Because it can change. My dad last year with all of his health issues, and he went back to rehab and did 21 days and 26 days. Like, how we set it out in the beginning isn't the way that it ended. Now he's back at home with home health and able to do those things. But we had to change courses and look for advice and get help. So just because you set a plan doesn't mean that that's the way that it has to go. And in today's society and where we live, for sure, there are so many options. There are so many people out there who have different experiences. We have different facilities. Years ago, this wasn't always the case. You had to stay at home. But now there are so many other options, ways to pay for it. It doesn't have to just be a burden on the family to take on that. There's people like you who, can walk them through this, or financial advisors who can let them know how to use the assets to work for them.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So let's talk about, maybe Miss Smith, she did her 21 days.
Yeah.
And I will say, I think you and I hear this a lot too. Miss Smith, she went to the hospital. She needs to be discharged to rehab, but family, they just really want to bring her home. Okay.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things though that we will push back on when it comes to that. If you are, a younger aging adult and you really want to get back to that independence, it's going to be difficult for us to do that in the home to the same degree as a skilled nursing rehab is going to do it.
Absolutely.
I know it sucks. I mean, we can be honest, nobody wants to be in the hospital. Nobody wants to be in a facility any longer than they have to. But what I try to tell people is if you will just grit and, put the work in, it's like anything else in life. If you put the work in, it will pay out. And then when we do bring you home, you'll have those skills that you didn't have before, because we just can't replicate that to the same degree that they can do in a facility.
Well, and not only that, too, a lot of it is the education for the family that's going to be taking care of their loved one. It seems so easy just to bring them home and to be able to do, X, Y, and Z. But whenever you're doing it for 24/7, it is so difficult. I thought we could just bring my dad home and we'll just manage. At the time, he wasn't even walking. He was in Depends and could only move an arm, But now we're almost a year to the day out of it. And he is driving to the store. He's walking but it took 2 acute rehab stays, a 26-day stay, home health coming in, and care and family education. A lot of education on my mother's piece, side of things, caregivers coming in the home to make sure that things are okay. So it can be done at home, but definitely suggest that after a facility
Yeah.
stay for that. Absolutely.
Yes. So let's take Miss Smith. She did her 21-day rehab. Now it's time
Okay.
for her to come home. So let's
Yeah.
kind of walk through what are her options at home.
Mm-hmm.
If she decides she wants to age in place, that's the term that everybody is talking
It's
about right
moving
now.
now. It's
That's
the
the
new
cool
thing.
new thing.
Yes.
So let's kind of go through those options.
Okay. So if Miss Smith is set after rehab on coming home, family has had the education. One important thing that I'm just going to put in here is DME is durable medical equipment. Before a family member leaves a facility, the hospital, acute rehab, anything like that, make sure that you have spoken to somebody at the hospital about a bedside commode, a shower chair, a shower bench, a walker, a rollator. On the home health side of things, I cannot tell you how many times family members get home and they're like, my mom can't get in the door. We don't have a walker, because they wheel you to the car in a wheelchair and put you in the car, and they don't yet they're gone. And then they get home and they're like, how am I going to get her up the steps? So coming home, make sure that you have whatever equipment is needed. A lot of times in a therapy setting, acute rehab, you will have a meeting with the therapy team. The therapy team then will let you know, like, hey, your mom needs a wheelchair, a rollator, a walker. And so the social worker or the discharge planner will write a script out for all of that. Either you will get it and take it, or they'll send it to whoever, it's your choice. So once all of that is taken care of, then you will have the option for home health. Home health, it is always your choice. It is a Medicare benefit. And so most home healths across the board offer skilled nursing, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, social worker, and home health aide. And so they will start their service 24 to 48 hours after you come home from rehab. Typically, the nurse comes out first. They do the medicine, vitals, make sure there's no side effects. They'll make sure the home is safe. And then physical therapy and occupational therapy will start. And then any other services that your doctor will order. Home health is skilled care and works very closely with your primary care doctor. So we take everything back to the doctor. All of our orders come from a physician, whether it's the one at the hospital, your specialty cardiologist, or your primary care doctor. Excuse me. So we work very closely with your doctors. Then, should we go ahead? You want to talk about home care this section, or?
Well, tell them how often do you
Okay.
get a visit with home health? Okay.
Okay. So home health, the first assessment with the nurse comes in and she will tell you, set goals. And by those goals, your insurance and the goals that are set will dictate how many visits home health has to come out. So a lot of times if we're doing med management, and things like that, it may be one time a week. But if you have wound care or had a major surgery, Miss Smith has got a cut, doctors want us, we may come out 2 to 3 times a week, depending on what's going on. So depending on the severity, the nurse will come out 1 to 3 times a week. And then physical therapy, it's the same thing. Each discipline that comes out, goals will be set, because home health's goal is to get you back fully independent as you were before. So with the goals being set, then they may come out 1 time or 3 times. And then after a couple of weeks and you start getting stronger, cognitively, you know about your medicines, education's there, then we'll start tearing down how many times we come. So if we're coming out 3, then we may start coming out 2, and then we'll drop down to 1 and get you ready for a discharge plan.
Yeah, because the whole point is either to teach you or the primary caregiver how to care for yourself, how to care for that person. It's not long term. I think that's what people miss, is that it's not long term and it's not personal care based or homemade.
Yes. No, we get a lot of referrals for like home health aid. Home health aid is not maybe once a week, but with the way insurance now is structured, if you're coming home and you have fallen or broken a hip or super weak, we don't want to use one of your visits that could be for therapy on a home health aid. So that is where home care comes in to play.
We do.
Yes, that's what Kelly does.
So home care is that non-medical side of
Yes.
home health, right? And so we work really closely together with our home health partners, but we're going to do the non-medical, the personal care, the companionship, the homemaking, errands and escorts to appointments, those things that you really need to stay independent, but you may be either working to get back to, or you may just need help with.
Yeah.
So home care is a really good option for that transition when somebody's coming home from a hospital or rehab stay, especially in the beginning, because we're really concerned about a re-injury or an illness. You're in a new, I always tell people you're kind of in a new body because it doesn't work the same way that it did
That's
before
right.
you broke something or had surgery or got sick or whatever it is. And so
Absolutely.
your skill level is just going to be a little different. And we don't want you going back home doing the same thing you did before until you get your sea legs, right?
That's right.
Home care can help with that. It doesn't mean that somebody needs to be in the house with you for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It could be that they just need to come in the mornings for a couple hours or in the evenings for a couple hours. Maybe help you the first time you get in a shower, or be a standby assist just to make sure you don't fall. Because if you re-injure, I'm telling you right now, it is a much more difficult recovery.
Absolutely.
We have got to avoid that. And so a lot of people, we get a lot of pushback. Oh, I'm fine. I'm independent. I would suggest, regardless of your independence, that you bring someone in for the first couple of weeks for no other reason than a safeguard against a re-injury.
Yes. Well, and coming home, you think that you're as independent as you were when you left.
You're not.
That's not the case. And so whenever you come home, how nice is it not to have to worry about my prescriptions that need to be picked up, because y'all can do that, right? Like you can go pick scripts.
Absolutely.
And I know like Walmart has like delivery now with groceries, but who's going to bring them in? Who's going to put them up? Who's going to cook the meal? Who's going to get the dog food that Chewy has delivered off the front porch?
Or do the laundry, or, call the doctor's office and make sure you've got your follow-up appointment, or, there's a lot of things that we just don't think about that home care can really help with. I think that
absolutely.
An important distinction is that it's not covered by Medicare, and that tends to be what detracts people and what makes people nervous. But like I said, you don't have to have someone in your home 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We can make it extremely affordable, and there are benefits that will cover home care. So if you were a veteran, or you're a veteran spouse and your spouse is deceased, if you have long-term care insurance that you purchased independently of your health insurance or anything else, there are even state programs that offer home care assistance. And so it really just depends on, again, each individual is unique, right? But we can also make it super affordable so that you're not spending thousands of dollars, but you're getting the care that you need and slowly kind of coming off of that care and being independent again. Those are my favorite cases, the ones that they get to let us go and say, I hope I never see you again. Because
yes,
I hope I never see you again too.
That's right. It doesn't have to be, oh, I have home care coming in now, I'm going to be paying for this for the rest of my life. Like that's not the case, because we want to see you back independent. And on the home health side, we love whenever home care is in, because that means our physical therapist can do education. We can give them a list of exercises, and your care can say, hey, remember, like it's 12:30. They wanted you to do these exercises 3 times a day, or whatever the case may be. There's a routine. Home health, we also know that they're getting the nutrition. Somebody's cooking. Somebody is doing those things. So whenever a nurse comes out, it doesn't have to be What'd you eat? When is the last time you ate?
Right.
We know that somebody's in there, has eyes on them, and making sure that they're okay.
Yeah,
So
it's some extra accountability, and that,
absolutely.
especially if this is mom or dad's first, first discharge from something like this, or you can't be there all the time. It can be a lot. I have a client who daughter lives in Texas, and she could only be here for like 3 days. I mean, it's amazing that she could be here for 3 days.
Yeah,
But she was nervous when I leave, who's going to make sure that mom has groceries and that her medication gets picked up. And she can't drive yet because she's still got this walker. And, we can help kind of fill in those gaps. And it can be very affordable. So I think that that's an important distinction to make for people, that, home care, when done correctly, can be a really nice benefit.
absolutely.
Just like home health, there's lots of different agencies out there. There's lots of different options. We always suggest, no matter what you're doing, that you get 3 opinions, right? That you
For
contact
sure.
3 different prospective agencies for home health or home care. And you
Yeah,
can even ask us, who would you use for the other? Because a lot of
absolutely.
times, we're gonna tell you who we worked with, or
Mhm.
more importantly, we might tell you who to stay away from. And I mean, the other thing is, ask your friends. Ask your church, your Sunday school group,
Yes.
people that you interact with a lot. They're going to know this is not something we talk about often, but when you ask, they're going to have opinions.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
That's one thing we know.
um,
Everybody has opinions when it comes
Everybody
to,
has an opinion. Take it or leave it. But also with that, just because you choose one doesn't mean that you have to stick with that one.
right.
Like if there's an issue or they are not meeting your needs, you don't have to stay with them. If you've had them previously and weren't necessarily satisfied, you can choose another agency. And so it's always your choice. Some places don't always make you feel like that, but it is always your choice for sure.
Yes, absolutely. So one thing that's cool is that home care and home health can work together. We can work in
Yes.
conjunction together. We can both go in assisted livings together.
Yep.
We can both go in independent livings together or separately.
Yep.
Um, where can home health not go?
So, home health cannot go into a nursing facility or a rehab, acute or 21-day rehab, because insurance is already paying for that. And the
Right.
insurance pays for our services. Insurance, because medical insurance, Medicare, doesn't pay for your services.
Right.
You're able to be everywhere.
To be wherever. You want to take me, I'll go.
That's right.
But I
Um,
do think, and I've got a video that I can link here, but I did a breakdown of Medicare, just kind of explaining A, B, C, and D. I
Love
do
it.
think it's important to kind of highlight that, we get a lot of people who ask us about Medicare Advantage plans and those C plans.
Mhm.
So, and sometimes we kind of, not all Medicare Advantage plans are the same. And so it's important to kind of talk about it right now, because we're talking about facilities and home health. When you're trying to decide, okay, am I going to get a Part C that takes the place of traditional or original Medicare A and B? You want to call these providers and find out if they accept it, because that's what we tend to see as the issue, right?
Like 100%. I can't tell you how many times it's enrollment time for a Part C or you're on traditional Medicare, but then you see that other insurances will pay for all of your meds or they'll do this. As soon as you enroll in that, 2 days later, you get a letter that says that your doctor no longer is in network with your new insurance plan. So the thing to look at is Medicare at this moment. We know that it can always change, but
Yeah.
Medicare right now, the doctor can say, hey, this patient needs an MRI. This patient needs to go into a rehab. And there is no authorization. There's no pre-authorization. It is accepted acute rehab. You can be admitted straight from home, and they don't have to call and get the pre-authorizations for it. They verify that you have the insurance and you can go. But whenever you start looking at Advantage plans, you have to like pre-authorizations, peer-to-peer approvals. There are a lot of hoops that have to go through. You can't have an MRI until you have an X-ray or a CT or however that line goes. They dictate your level of care, whereas Medicare, they let the doctors and you dictate how the plan's going to go and what you need. They really let the doctors take care of you.
Yeah.
That
So
is
before you pick up that shiny, like exciting looking Advantage, Part C, make sure you're well informed. That's the biggest
yes,
thing. You just want to be
yes,
really well informed. There are some great, Advantage plans out there, but in smaller areas like ours, in rural areas, you got to be careful because
mhm.
great ones, you may not have a provider anywhere close to you.
Yes,
And that's the last thing that we want that for you. So just, again, find somebody you trust, a trusted advisor. If you don't have somebody you trust, ask us and we will help to point you in the right direction. But
yes.
if
And
you,
if we don't know, we'll find somebody who does know.
yes,
Like, we don't know it all at all. But there's somebody else out there that is smarter than us that I can like link you to or find out the answer to, because I'm telling you, my mom spent a lot of time on the phone with a lot of these Advantage plans. Every single one of them were like, of course you're still going to have Medicare. Of course you have Medicare. Yeah, but Medicare no longer dictates your care.
right.
The new company is the one that dictates it, and that's what they don't tell you.
Right. Yeah.
So
And it's not to be confused with a Medigap. That's confusing, or
yeah,
supplemental. There's supplemental. I mean, could we
yeah.
make it more confusing for people? Let's do the A, B's, and C's, and then the gap and the
And
supplement.
then the F's and oh yeah, it
I
just
mean,
keeps
like,
going.
it is so confusing. Let's just be as confusing as possible for folks. But, it's the
Absolutely.
government. We got to make it confusing. Okay. So we're talking about home. Okay. So
Yep.
we can stay with you. Home care can stay with you long term. We
Yep.
can, show up daily. We can, come and go as needed. It really just depends on the agency and what their minimums are and kind of what programs they offer. Home health, it's not just transitional care. Like,
That's right.
and using, I will say that one thing that I think
Mhm.
is really beneficial is when you do have a home care in that understands home health. I'm going to be watching for when is there a trigger that I can bring in my home health partner, because Medicare
Yes,
is going to pay for that.
that's
So
right.
if there's a medication change, if there's a weight, like we've had a decrease in weight or an appetite change, or if I'm seeing anything funny, then
Yeah.
I'm going to call and say, hey, can I get home health?
Yes,
What we want to stay on the preventative side of things, and
absolutely.
that's what helps you age in place. But okay, so let's talk about there may come a time when we no longer are looking at a restorative side of care, and instead
Yep.
we're going to focus more on the quality of life than the
Yep.
quantity. A lot of people have misconceptions about hospice, and
Absolutely.
I think it's important to talk about
Hmm.
hospice. You and I have talked a lot. We feel very strongly about hospice.
Yeah.
It's an amazing benefit when used
Yes,
correctly. But one thing we find is that people don't use it early enough.
that's right.
Uh,
Mhm.
so hospice is typically, they come in when the doctor is given a diagnosis that it could be considered 6 months or less
Right.
to live. Now, do we know that for sure? No.
No.
Nobody has a crystal ball. I've had clients that have been on hospice for a year. I've had
Yeah.
clients that have graduated from hospice, have gotten better,
And come back to home health.
yes,
Absolutely.
and have gone
Mhm.
back. So just
Mhm.
know that just because we use the word hospice, it doesn't mean that the black angel of death is coming. And that's what people think.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Well, and not only that, but talk about graduating. We've had patients who came out of the hospital, were super sick. Family in the beginning was just against hospice, but because of the service, the time that they come out, home health aid every day if needed, you have a doctor, nurse practitioner able to make house calls, or nurses come out as much as needed, because they get all of that care all at once in the beginning. Typically, they see it, they get better. Like
Yeah.
they start getting better. That's not always the case, but we've
Right.
had a patient who that he just needed extra care at home and then was able to graduate and come back to home health, you know?
Right.
So, but it is usually they wait until the very end when they could have been receiving supportive services, a chaplain, nurses coming by to educate on exactly what's going on. And that makes the process of the next 6 months or year or ever how long it is so much easier to know that you have a team that is educated and this is what they do.
And they're there to walk alongside you. I mean, they're
Um,
there to answer
mhm.
questions. You know, it's one of those things in life that we don't want to talk about. Nobody wants to talk about death. Nobody wants to talk about aging. But to be able to talk to somebody who's been there and has gone through it and has seen people who have died, you know, there's a lot of peace that can come to that because then you kind of know what to expect and you're not,
Yeah.
you know, I think that a
Mhm.
lot of times people worry about bringing their family members home to die because they don't know what to do. When we brought my
Yeah.
grandmother home on hospice, you know, my mom, one of the questions that she had was, well, you know, but what if, I mean, there's not going to be a nurse there at all times if I need them. And you know, my
Mhm.
comment was, why would you need a nurse at all times? You know, you're good. You're not going to need that. But she needed that confidence. And so, you know, I was able to help give her that confidence, but she
Absolutely.
also has a nurse that she could call at any time.
And they're there like within the window. So they are also, we were talking about state regulations earlier, like they are also mandated by state, just like home health, just like assisted livings. They have guidelines and parameters they have to set. So knowing that there's a timeline that you can call, you can get the help that you need. A nurse is on the way. They're 24/7. You know, it definitely gives you like a peace of mind going through the process.
Yes. And so I think let's talk about some myths because this is always the thing that comes up. So a couple of myths with hospice. Obviously, you know, somebody's going to die if we put them on hospice. Like it's immediate, right?
They're done.
That's a
Yep.
myth. It's not going to happen. I mean, sometimes
Yep.
it does because we wait too late, but
Hmm.
if done right, no, there's no reason. What's another myth that you come across a lot?
They are gonna come in and give them the morphine just to take them
Yeah,
out. Like they're gonna come in and I feel like that's like the number one, you know, like
yeah,
where is it stored? What is it? You know, no, that is not the case. You know,
yes.
they are there for quality of life. They're
Yeah.
not given morphine as soon as the nurse comes in the door. You know, you can take your loved one out and still go eat. You can take your loved one out and go fishing. You know, a lot of hospice agencies have like like a wish program, and they have done some amazing things with their volunteers. You know, that volunteers and chaplains that come, it's not all doom and gloom whenever you get on hospice.
I think that what
um
people don't understand about about morphine. Okay, so when you come onto hospice, there are two medications that are almost always filled immediately for you to have in the home in case you need
yeah.
them. Doesn't mean that you start giving them. Okay, and that's what people don't get. Just
Yes.
because they're there doesn't mean that, oh, I need to start giving them. But those are Ativan and morphine. And if you have a good hospice nurse, they're going to explain this part.
Yeah.
But you know, obviously we get a lot of the myth that comes along with the morphine, so it doesn't always get explained. But I think what you have to understand is that it's 6 months or less, and too often we see somebody that gets admitted onto hospice on Friday night, and then before the end of the weekend, they
And move fast.
because it was so fast that and the family held off for so long. So when the nurse first comes in, nobody knows where you are in that stage, right? The last thing that you want is for your loved one to be in the middle of a situation where they are in pain and they are uncomfortable and it is 2 a.m. and you cannot help them.
That's right.
That's what having those meds in the home prevents. Okay.
Yeah.
The other really cool thing that most people don't realize about morphine is that a lot of times it helps somebody breathe because, I'm not a doctor and I don't understand like all the chemistry, but my understanding is that the way that it works is that it helps to smooth that muscle, those in the lungs, that smooth muscle, and it helps relax it and make it easier for the person to breathe in the right dosing. And so whereas you might think it's drugging them, what it's really doing is giving them relief so that they can breathe easier. And that's pretty cool.
Yes, and not be in pain, like through whatever area they're in, or part of the process. You brought up a point, and I was going to talk about it, and I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. You'll come back to it.
It
But
will.
like,
It always does.
my other thing is a myth that we hear a lot. You can keep your primary care physician. You don't want to just like get rid of everything. These are the people that have been with you through, a lot of people have had their primary care since they were young. And
absolutely.
You really respect that person's opinion. And so you can still have them as part of your care team, but you also have the advantage of having a nurse practitioner and a medical director as part of the home health or as part of the hospice care team. So,
yes.
And it doesn't
you can still go to other doctors, depending on diagnosis and all of that. You don't have to tell your cardiologist, I'm sorry, I'm out, you can still go and see, you can still go to other doctors. Once the admission nurse comes and walks you through that process, then you will talk about the care and what is needed and all of that. So there is such a stigma around once hospice comes out, I can no longer have this. They're bringing these medicines in and I'm out.
I'm giving up.
I'm giving up. And that is not the case. You will be surrounded by a team of people who do this, who love their job, who are there to make things much easier for the family. Not only that, be able to explain things to you that either the doctor didn't have time to, or your family member, There's a lot of times, with my parents, I'm like, call me when you get to the doctor's office because I don't know, but I know the questions to ask, we'll let him talk about it.
You might think it's a dumb question to ask because, you've never had anybody who's died before, but there are no dumb questions. And so being able to ask okay, so what is this noise? What am I expecting?
Absolutely.
Does this, and what does this mean? They're there to support you. And I can tell you, hospice nurses are like angels on earth. There's a reason they go into that field. Nurses by and far are amazing. And that what they do, the fact that they, what they deal with on a day-to-day basis, God love them.
I know.
It takes a special person to go into hospice nursing. And so just know, you're surrounded by a team of people who do truly care about what they do, and they want to be supportive for you. Not every hospice is the same. And so it's choice, like we talked about earlier. For me, though, what I always tell clients is that it's the one time Medicare is going to pay for things they should have paid for the whole time. So if you do it for no other reason than just the practicality, that's where I come from. I'm like, okay, I know I can get this person admitted on hospice because they, we've seen them decrease in weight and appetite. We've had, I just know some of the
AFib, congestive heart failure, COPD, and now you can get the Depends and the oxygen and all of these things that you couldn't. So if your loved one is this was the part. So if your loved one is continually cycling back into the hospital, you have home health, they come back home health comes out, but in a day or two, they're back in the hospital again. And then, on our side on home health, a lot of times our clinical managers hey, I really feel like they're going to benefit from hospice at this point. Not that you can't go back to the hospital, but they can send nurses out daily. They can send people out daily to watch and communicate and take care of your your team's going to take care of you and the needs that you have. So that way, hopefully you can stop all the hospital visits. Hopefully you can get everything that you need. And so I encourage you, if your loved one is continually cycling back into the hospital for the same diagnosis, COPD, CHF, things like that, and you've been so against hospice, just have a conversation with somebody. Reach out. We know a lot of people that work in the hospice industry.
Yes.
We can definitely set you up with somebody. Just have a conversation. You don't
Right.
have to do anything, but at least have the conversation.
Yeah.
To maybe stop some of that, because it's hard every time your loved one leaves their home to go into the hospital to come back. That is not
It's
fun.
tough. It's tough
Yeah,
on them. It's tough on the family.
absolutely.
Okay, so we're circling up, getting close to an hour. I knew it would not take us long to
I
we can
know,
ramble about this for forever longer. But
forever.
let's just talk resources real fast. So if
Absolutely.
you have questions about long-term care and facilities and that kind of thing, your resources are your area on aging, your
Yeah.
ombudsman.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
The cool thing is that you can call the 1-800-AGE line, and it doesn't matter where in the state of Alabama you are. It'll kind of take you through a menu that figures out what county or segment of the state you're in. And
Yes.
then they kind of have a process to where they ask you questions and they can figure out, okay, so based on your answers, you could qualify for these benefits, but you also might want to talk to this person. Like, there's this
Huge.
crazy misconception that the area on aging is just for people who are,
Low income.
low income, economically challenged. That is not the case. The
I don't
resources
know.
and just the knowledge, huge, huge,
Huge.
huge.
Hmm.
So use that resource. What else, Shasta?
Going back to the area on aging, Maria is she's our ombudsman.
You're
For the,
ombudsman.
yeah, she's the ombudsman for the area. So she is a patient advocate. So a resident of a facility, assisted living. So she covers the nursing homes, assisted livings, anything that is regulated by the state. She doesn't go into independent livings, but SCALFs. So she's the ombudsman for our area. Huge resource. If your mom is talking about facilities and you just have some questions, call her. We love Maria.
We'll even
um,
take you on a tour.
she'd tell us to calm down, Kelly. But there's
Hi,
a
Maria.
scope. I know. But there's a scope of things that she can do, or maybe answer some questions. I know there's fine lines in her role as well, but she is a great resource. And if it's not her in the area that can help you, she can tell you somebody in that area. Not only that, whatever your hesitation is in asking questions to the public on forums like this, writing that question on there, what to do, just put it to the side. We have seen literally, I'm sorry, everything. We have seen,
Yes.
seen,
Seen it
heard
all.
all the everything. So just ask us. No question is a dumb question that we stated earlier. Just let us know how we can help you. If we don't know, which we may not most of the time, but it's okay. We will find somebody to connect you with.
I love the challenge to find a new resource and to figure out, okay, so who do we know in the area that may have this?
Absolutely. What can we do? How can we find new resources for you? So, if your loved one is in the hospital, make sure that you talk to the social worker, find out whatever resources that you have, and always reach out on here, Facebook, whatever you need. And then definitely your area agency on aging.
That's awesome. If you are not part of our Aging in Auburn Opelika Facebook group and you're seeing this somewhere else, then I'm going to put the link below so that you can go ahead and join that page. It's an awesome page. And
Absolutely.
you can ask questions and get resources there. But if you have a friend or an aging, parent in the area, or make sure to share this or our page just so that they can get the information too, because we're not here to sell what we do. We're just here
No,
to provide the resources and to help kind of get
absolutely.
that information out, because what we keep finding is that people just don't know what is
Maybe.
there. Shasta, I think that one of the biggest things that in doing all this, I'm continuously, I can't even talk, continuously surprised at the end of our panels when people are like, oh my gosh, that was such great information, I
Richard,
did not know that. And this is just stuff that we do every day and we talk about all
every
the
day.
time. um,
Yes.
And we take for granted that if you're not in this world, then you don't see how everything connects. Would you agree?
I completely agree. But I think in the last panel we did, one of the things that we hit on is everything is so streamlined. So, like, home health stays in home health side, hospice stays in hospice side, home care stays in home care side. So, whenever you go to the primary care doctor and you're there because your blood pressure is out of control, like, they're only in the primary care side. They're not
Right.
focusing on the bigger picture of what all's going on. But in the grand scheme of things, we all have to work together.
Yes.
And so that's why knowing the resources, having these talks, like putting it out there, hey, I don't know what's happening, but I need help,
Yeah.
and not being afraid to do that is so important.
Absolutely.
Because we all work together. It's just we haven't thought about us all like overlapping and coming together to do this, to get the
Yeah, it's
education
very
out.
segmented. We're really
Mhm.
siloed out. And unfortunately, healthcare hasn't progressed enough to pay for somebody who oversees the whole continuum.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a sad truth, but that's why you and I educate ourselves. That's why we do these
Yeah,
panels, because the value of understanding that full continuum is, I mean, it's so beneficial for our clients, for our patients, for their
absolutely.
families. And we just want our community to know about it.
Absolutely. And you do have choices. And so instead of you waiting until you get into a pinch, or even if you are in a pinch, that emergency right then, you may have already known, but you don't know what to do because you've got to call 911 and they've got to go to the hospital and we've got to do this, X, Y, and Z. It makes it much more difficult without having the
Absolutely.
resources there and having those conversations. So me and
Absolutely.
Kelly are here. If y'all need anything, have any questions, we would love to answer or see what feedback they want, like
Yeah.
more information about.
For sure. So if you enjoyed this, or if you got some value out of it, I'd love for you to leave a comment, like it, give me like an emoji or something that tells me that it was good, so that we'll continue doing it.
Absolutely.
If you have a question that you don't want to post in the public group, you're welcome to post it to Shasta or myself privately, and we'll get back to you. But we're
Absolutely.
hoping to continue to do some more of these. For today, this took us, we got in all this information in for an hour. That's pretty good.
Yes. The next
But
ones
we
don't
will,
have to be so long. We can make them shorter. Me and Kelly just like to talk. We're really passionate about this.
we are very passionate about this. But if you have suggestions for what you would like to see next, let us know, and we will see you in the next video.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.